Welcome to another's deep dive. We're going deep into you today. It's a biography that promises to uh, show us the person behind all those power suits. You might think you know Angela Merkel already, the stoic, the pragmatic chancellor, but trust me, her path to becoming Germany's longest-serving leader, full of twists and turns you wouldn't believe.
It's a story that really challenges those common narratives we hear. We hear a lot about Merkel's quiet determination. But when you actually look at the details, you see a very shrewd political mind, making calculated choices, navigating a world that was anything but predictable.
Let's rewind all the way back to Merkel's childhood, back to East Germany. Not exactly a playground, was it?
No.
Living under the Stasi, I mean, the East German secret police, must have been like constantly walking on eggshells.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just imagine a society where, a whisper could get you into trouble. The Stasi had this vast network of informants, just ordinary citizens pressured to report on their friends, their neighbors, even their own family. It created this really chilling atmosphere of distrust and privacy. Privacy was a luxury that very few people could afford.
And the book even mentions that Merkel herself was approached to be an informant, which she says that she refused. But it really makes you think, how do you even navigate a system like that? I mean, could anyone truly escape the Stasi's reach?
Yeah, that's a question with no easy answers.
No.
And the book really highlights this moral dilemma by pointing out that some of Merkel's colleagues, even her friends, people like Lothar de Maizière, were actually later revealed to have collaborated with the Stasi. So it just adds this layer of complexity to her story. It raises all these questions about survival and compromise, and the choices that people make under such extraordinary pressure.
Yeah, heavy stuff. And yet, amidst all of this, Merkel seemed to focus on what she could control, right? She joined the Free German Youth, that's the official communist youth organization, studied physics, all, practical choices in a society where sticking out was risky.
Yeah, pragmatism seems to have been ingrained in her from a young age. And even her first marriage, according to the book, might have even been motivated by a desire to get better housing. So, these little details paint a picture of a young woman who is, yes, driven by ambition, but also aware of the limitations and the realities of the world that she was living in.
And then, boom, the Berlin Wall falls. Talk about a seismic shift. The world is changing right before her eyes. And yet the book mentions that she went to work the next morning, just like it was any other day. I mean, how do you even process that?
I know. That detail always fascinated me. Some people might see it as a sign of coldness, but I think it actually reveals a much deeper truth about Merkel. She wasn't one for impulsive reactions. Maybe it was stoicism, maybe it was this sense of duty, or maybe she was just, gathering her thoughts, observing before she actually made her move.
And that move comes when she joins the Democratic Awakening Party. That's a new political group that emerges in this, post-wall world. It seems like she had this innate ability to read the tea leaves, to understand which way the wind was blowing, and then fate intervenes, as it often does, right?
Right.
The Democratic Awakening Party leader, Wolfgang Schnurr, gets tangled up in a scandal, and suddenly Merkel is thrust into the spotlight. She goes from, unpacking computers for the party to becoming their spokesperson practically overnight.
Yeah. Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Right. I mean, had that scandal not happened, who knows where she'd be today. But luck can only take you so far.
Right.
You need the talent, the drive to capitalize on it.
Absolutely. And that's where Merkel's political instincts really shine through. This wasn't just about being lucky. It was about recognizing an opportunity and then seizing it.
And see that she did. It catapults her onto the national stage. And before you know it, she's dubbed Kohl's Girl, becomes Germany's youngest minister under Chancellor Helmut Kohl.
But that Kohl's Girl label wasn't exactly a compliment. There were a lot of whispers going around that she was, just a puppet, lacking experience, relying on Kohl's patronage. And the book even mentions this incident where she was ignored on a trip to Israel and ended up breaking down in frustration.
Ouch, that's gotta sting.
Yeah.
Sounds like she was constantly being underestimated, dismissed by people who saw her as a lightweight.
But that underestimation, that constant need to prove herself, might have actually been her greatest strength. It fueled her ambition, pushed her to work even harder and to master that political game. And it wasn't long before she would outmaneuver many of the people who had written her off.
Yeah, it's almost like all those early challenges that constant scrutiny, it forged her into this political steel trap. She learned to be patient. Wait for the right moment to strike.
And that moment arrives with what we call the political donations scandal. That rocks the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, Kohl's party. And it's a messy affair involving secret bank accounts, illegal contributions, and, really shakes the party to its core.
Okay, so ELI 5 time for me. Break this down. What exactly was the political donation scandal, and why was it such a big deal?
Okay, so imagine you discovered that your favorite sports team had been secretly paying off the referees to win games.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what the CDU was accused of doing, except instead of referees, it was political favors and influence.
So they were basically cheating the system.
Exactly. And it wasn't just small change we're talking about here. This was millions of Deutschmarks funneled through these secret accounts.
Right.
It was one of the biggest political scandals in German history.
And Kohl, her mentor, the guy who brought her into the big leagues, he's right smack in the middle of this mess. Talk about a loyalty test.
It would have been so easy for Merkel to just stand by Kohl, play the loyal protege. But she does something pretty remarkable. She publishes an article in a major newspaper publicly distancing herself from Kohl, calling for a fresh start for the party.
Wow. Power move.
Yeah.
It's like she saw the writing on the wall and decided to jump ship before it sank.
It was a calculated risk, but it paid off big time. While other prominent figures in the CDU were implicated, Merkel emerged from this whole thing unscathed, her reputation intact. And this move not only solidified her position within the party, but also positioned her as a potential leader, for a new generation.
So she navigated this minefield of a scandal and came out smelling like roses.
More than that, she actually turned the scandal to her advantage. By breaking from Kohl, she signaled that she was not beholden to the old guard, that she was willing to challenge the status quo.
It's like a chess game. And she's thinking 5 moves ahead, while everyone else is just trying to, survive.
That's a great analogy. Her ability to anticipate these political shifts, to understand the dynamics of power. It's really quite remarkable, and it becomes even more apparent as this scandal unfolds, leading to a series of resignations within the CDU.
Creating a power vacuum that, surprise, surprise, Merkel is perfectly positioned to fill.
Exactly. She ascends to the leadership of the CDU, and then in 2005 becomes Germany's first female chancellor. It's a story of ambition, yes, but also of strategic brilliance and a very keen understanding of timing.
But let's be real. Becoming chancellor is one thing. Actually governing a country, a whole other ballgame. And Merkel inherited a Germany that was facing some pretty serious economic challenges.
Imagine a country struggling with sluggish growth, high unemployment, a mountain of debt. That was the reality that Merkel faced when she took office. It was not a pretty picture.
So what did she do? Did she throw in the towel and say, this is too much?
Not a chance. Not Merkel. She tackled the problem head on, drawing on that same pragmatism that we saw in her early life. And instead of going for quick fixes or populist promises, she really focused on long-term solutions. She implemented a series of economic reforms that became known as Agenda 2010.
Agenda 2010 sounds intense.
Yeah.
What was the gist of it?
So think of it as a combination of tough love and strategic investments. It involved tightening the belt on social welfare programs, making it easier for businesses to hire and fire workers, and also investing in things like education and infrastructure. It wasn't popular, especially among those who felt that they were bearing the brunt of those cuts.
It sounds like she was making some bold, potentially unpopular choices.
Mm-hmm.
Did it work? Did Germany magically transform into an economic utopia?
Now, magically, and certainly not without its critics, but the results, they speak for themselves. Over time, Germany's economy began to recover. Unemployment fell, exports boomed, and the country solidified its position as the economic powerhouse of Europe.
So she took a gamble, and it paid off.
More than a gamble, it was a calculated risk based on, a deep understanding of economic principles and a willingness to make those tough decisions. And it also demonstrated her ability to withstand pressure and stay focused on the long-term goals.
But let's not sugarcoat it. These reforms, they did come at a social cost, right? There was pain involved, people struggling to adapt to a changing economic landscape.
Absolutely. And that's where the complexity of leadership comes in. There are always trade-offs. There are always difficult choices that impact people's lives. And Merkel's approach to economic reform was no different.
It makes you think about the balance between, pragmatism and compassion, between making tough decisions for the greater good and also considering the impact on individual lives. It's a tightrope walk, isn't it?
It is, and it's a walk that Merkel would continue to navigate as she faced even bigger challenges. On the global stage, challenges that would test her leadership in ways that, that she could never have imagined.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how that same, pragmatism, that focus on those long-term solutions, really shaped Merkel's approach to these global challenges. But the world stage, that's a different beast altogether. It's not just about economic policy. You're navigating, these complex geopolitical relationships, unexpected crises, the rise of new uh, global players.
And it's against this backdrop that Merkel really, comes into her own. And the book chronicles her handling of some major events, like the Eurozone crisis, the refugee crisis, the growing assertiveness of Russia, and, all while dealing with this constantly shifting cast of world leaders.
Let's unpack some of those one by one. Let's start with the Eurozone crisis. This was a time when several European countries were, right on the verge of economic collapse. What was Merkel's role in all this?
So imagine a house with multiple rooms. Each room represents a European country. Suddenly, one of those rooms starts leaking, and it's threatening to flood the entire house. That was basically the situation with the Eurozone. Countries like Greece, Portugal, Ireland, they were drowning in debt, and their struggles were threatening to bring down the entire European economy.
So Merkel had to play the role of plumber,
Yeah.
right, trying to fix the leak before the whole house went underwater.
Yeah, precisely. And her approach was very consistent with her economic philosophy. Fiscal discipline, structural reforms. She advocated for austerity measures, demanded that these struggling countries cut spending and implement reforms in exchange for financial assistance.
Sounds familiar. Same tough love that she applied to Germany's economic problems.
Yeah.
But did it work on a European scale?
Well, that's where the debate gets pretty heated. Some people argue that her insistence on austerity, while it was necessary to prevent a complete collapse, it might have actually prolonged the crisis, caused unnecessary hardship in those struggling countries. Others, however, say that her firmness was absolutely essential in preventing a domino effect that could have taken down the entire Eurozone.
So a mixed bag of results.
Yeah.
I guess there's no easy answer when it comes to managing a crisis of that magnitude.
Exactly. And this really highlights the complex reality of global leadership. There are rarely clear-cut solutions,
Right.
and every decision comes with trade-offs and unintended consequences.
Then came the refugee crisis back in 2015.
Mm.
Now this was a humanitarian disaster unfolding on Europe's doorstep. Millions of people fleeing war and persecution in countries like Syria, Afghanistan. How did Merkel respond to this unprecedented challenge?
She did something that surprised a lot of people, even people within her own party. She made the decision to open Germany's borders to over 1 million refugees. And it was a move that was praised by some as a bold act of compassion, but condemned by others as reckless and naive.
A decision that really divided not only Germany but Europe as a whole. Some people saw it as a sign of strength,
Right.
a leader willing to stand up for human rights. Others saw it as a threat to national security and cultural identity.
And that's what makes this period so fascinating. It reveals all those conflicting pressures and moral dilemmas facing leaders in this increasingly interconnected world. Do you prioritize national interests or global responsibility? Do you respond to fear or compassion?
Tough questions,
Yeah.
and there's no answer key for those. Looking back, how do we assess Merkel's handling of this crisis?
Well, the book doesn't really it doesn't really offer a definitive judgment. And I think that's appropriate because the long-term implications of this decision, they're still unfolding. What's clear, though, is that it was a defining moment in her chancellorship. It was one that revealed her capacity for both pragmatism and idealism.
Seems like every major event in Merkel's career, from the fall of the Berlin Wall to the Eurozone crisis to the refugee crisis, forced her to confront these really fundamental questions about power, about responsibility, about the kind of world that she wanted to help shape.
And that's what makes her story, so compelling. It's not just a biography of a political figure. It's a window into the complexities of leadership,
Hmm.
the challenges of navigating a rapidly changing world, and the choices that we all face when we're confronted with extraordinary circumstances.
So what's the takeaway for us, the listeners, grappling with our own versions of these challenges, maybe on a smaller scale? What can we learn from Merkel's journey?
I think her story offers, several really valuable lessons. First, the importance of preparation, Merkel's deep understanding of policy, her willingness to master the details allowed her to navigate these really complex issues with confidence. And second, the power of observation. She wasn't one to rush into action. She watched, she listened, and she waited for the right moment to make her move.
And finally, the courage to make those tough choices, even when they're unpopular, whether it was, pushing through those painful economic reforms or opening Germany's borders to refugees. She demonstrated a willingness to do what she believed was right, even when it came at a political cost.
It's a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about popularity contests. It's about making those hard calls,
Yeah.
staying focused on the long game, and leaving the world a little bit better than you found it.
This deep dive has been quite a roller coaster of insights. We've seen Merkel's evolution from this, young physicist in East Germany to this global political icon, navigating triumphs, setbacks with this really unique blend of pragmatism, resilience, and maybe even a touch of luck.
And I think the book leaves us with a final provocative thought. Despite all of her political achievement, the author kind of hints at this sense of mystery surrounding Merkel. What were her true motivations? What did she sacrifice along the way? Did she ever yearn for a different life, one less defined by power and responsibility? These questions linger, reminding us that even the most public figures have private struggles, internal conflicts that shape their choices, and ultimately define their legacy.
It's a reminder that behind every powerful figure, there is a human being grappling with their own complexities and contradictions. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the enigma that is Angela Merkel. Until next time, happy exploring.